sorry about that. What happened is I clicked the stop broadcast button instead of the stop screen sharing button. Anyway, hopefully we'll get through this. So I'll just wait a couple seconds so people can get back on the stream. Man, this is the worst Hangout ever. Oh, hey, Sean. It's confusing because like the Hangout thing says 0 viewers. So it sounds like nobody is able to watch. But people in the chat room seems to say it's working. So hopefully it's all right. Yeah, I mean, for those who weren't around like a couple months ago, I used to do these things like more regularly, like maybe once a week. So I got a little bit of practice, but then people kind of stopped joining as much. So I decided to put them on hold for a while. So I need to get back in the groove and remember how it's done. Okay, so internationalization is one thing. What else? URL slugs. This is something that's been asked a lot. So basically, like nicer URLs instead of slash post slash and then like a huge string of random characters, have something nicer in there based on the post's title. This is not as easy as it seems because there's like a lot of details to consider. Like first of all, what's like the pattern of the URL? Do you put like just the slug or slug and ID? If you put just the slug, it means that you have to somehow keep track like of all of the post's previous slugs in case it changes and you want to redirect. So probably what we'll do is slug plus ID, and then use that ID to find the post, and the slug would just be like here for SEO value. But then the meter's default IDs are really long, so maybe we want shorter IDs. In that case, we need like a way to generate them and make sure they're unique. So it's not trivial. Like there's quite a few things to consider. I was hoping like somebody would take the lead on that, but since it's pretty complex, maybe it's better at least, well, maybe if I do it myself, or at least if I'm involved in that. So after the internationalization thing, I want to set aside some time to do that. And maybe it can become a pattern that other meter apps can also easily reuse, like could be a package or something. That'd be pretty cool. So that's coming. Another thing that's been asked for a lot is file uploads. So typically people want to upload an image to go along with a post, maybe a GIF or even a video or something. They want to be able to upload things to Telescope. But again, it's not that easy because you can't just upload the file to your server, because if you're hosting on Heroku or something, it won't persist across app restarts. The only files that persist are the ones that are in your Git repo. So what else can be done? So there's this thing called collection FS where you can like store files in your database. So that could be pretty cool, but I don't think it scales that well if your files starts getting bigger. So the ideal solution would be S3, I guess. But again, it means like S3 integration. So I know there's plugins out there that do it. It's probably not that big a deal, but also not something that you can beat on like in just a day. It probably takes at least a week or 10 days of work, I would say. So just to let people know that when you add a new feature, it's not, especially for something like Telescope, right? It's not just like adding a new feature to your own app where you can just hard code your S3 keys in there and like kind of hack something together and push it live. For an open source app for like Telescope, first of all, you have to make sure It works like for everybody, so you can have to add settings so people can set it up and adapt it to their needs. You need to document it. You need, to make sure it plays nice with the code base that's already there. Maybe sometimes you realize that, oh, actually to implement that, that it's kind of an edge case that the current code doesn't handle, so you have to refactor what's already there to like be more general or handle that new use case. So it's never that simple. So that's why things can sometimes move slow. It's not just about adding random bits of code. It has to make sense in the context of the whole code base. So those are the main like three things, I see for the future. Internationalization, Slugs, file upload. Oh, another one is a better video support. So right now, video support is basically just using Embedly's YouTube iframes, but there's an annoying bug where when you close the iframe, it keeps playing the video. And yeah, I want to find a way where like the iframe is controlled through YouTube's, like through a JavaScript API or something, or maybe YouTube's API, not sure. So that doesn't happen. Because yeah, I think Telescope could be pretty sweet for videos. Like if you want to create a video site about gaming or MMA or sports or whatever, have people post videos, comment on them, rank them. I'm not aware of any really good solution to do that out there, so I think it'd be pretty interesting for Telescope. So yeah, better video support is on the way. So yeah, that's for features. Like people have also posted a few questions and comments in the chat room and on Crowdcast. So let me go through them. One of them is better SEO support, but it has 0 votes, so I don't think we'll do that. No, okay, just kidding. Yeah, better SEO support is always important. So the Slugs thing I was talking about is part of it. I also know there's problem with the like server-side rendering. Especially when you want to link up a Telescope page from Facebook, it doesn't always pull in the right title and so on, and thumbnails. So I need to look into that. It's always kind of hard to debug because it's the kind of thing that might work on one instance and not on the other. Maybe sometimes like Spiderable runs out, or Phantom.js, runs out of memory or something. It crashes, and Spiderable doesn't work anymore. Things like this can happen. So it's kind of a pain to debug, but we have to do it. What else? So manual image upload for posts, image attachment to comments, avatar through Cloudinary. Yeah, those are all kind of the same thing I was talking about. So file upload. So file upload wouldn't be limited to posts. If we can make it work for posts, it can just become like one more a custom field type. So just like you can add a text input or text area, you could add a file upload, and then you can use that on the user object to add an avatar field. You can use that on the comment object to let people upload, memes or whatever in your comments. So I think once we do the work for posts, it will be pretty easy to adapt it. Badges and reward points a la Stack Overflow. That would be pretty cool, but also, yeah, it's the kind of thing that's not really core, I think, where it might be a lot of work, but it's something that not everybody needs. So I think it's best left for a third-party plugin. Because to be honest, I think even the current Telescope core probably has a bit too much stuff in it. There's some stuff like the Embedly integration. It's debatable if this should belong in core, because not every Telescope instance uses that. Or invites, for example. If your site is public, you don't really need invites. And like, to be clear, people can already remove those packages, and it will work just fine. But there's an argument to be made that maybe they shouldn't be in the core code base, and maybe they should be maintained by other people. Because that's something as well. Like, the more things are in the core code base, the more things I have to maintain, or the core team has to maintain personally. So, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't be okay to help with a badges or reward points package. Like if somebody else gets the ball rolling, I'm happy to make pull requests and also just advise people on the best way to do it. There were also a couple more comments. Let me just catch up with the chat room here. What do you think of making Telescope for profit so we can move faster, something like sharetribe.com? So I don't know what sharetribe.com is. Let me take a look here. And I'll share my screen so everybody can see. And this time I'll try not to break everything. Create a marketplace with ShareTribe. It only takes a minute. So it seems like this is kind of a hosted service for marketplaces like Shopify or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have a hosted service for Telescope, like where you just sign up and you get your Telescope site. There's one that's already exists that does the same thing that's called Postatic. So it's like Hacker News as a service. But there's like a couple good reasons why I think it's still too early to do that for Telescope. The main one is that, I don't really have a team with me. So there's like volunteers, there's people like Jeremy that's helping out a ton. And you guys in the chat room are helping out too, but I don't think it would be doable for me right now to launch a service like this because, well, there would be the cost of running the service plus support plus marketing the service. It wouldn't be that easy. The advantage of open source is that you can really keep costs low and also kind of have everybody pitch in, right? If as soon as I start making money, why would you guys help me make more money? There's kind of, I mean, I know you're all nice people and you probably would help, but there's still this aspect that I think, if as long as it stay purely open source, everybody is kind of equal. And if you guys want to profit, if you guys want to launch your own Telescope site, that's great to make money. I can make money with the Discover Meteor, buy Discover Meteor. So we all have our channels, but Telescope itself kind of stays, pure, at least for now. In the future, sure. In the future, when the project is more stable and, I can handle the support load better, yeah, I'll definitely consider that. The other aspect is that, well, the easier it gets to use Telescope, the more like regular people, like non-developers, will use it. And the more non-developers people use it, well, the more support you get. And also those people will not contribute back to the project because they're not developers. So we have to find a balance where, like, okay, the service is easy to use and easy to set up, but at the same time, if we make it too easy too early and kind of promise things that it can't really handle right now, like, yeah, it will just work out of the box, everything is perfect, use it, pay me money, I don't think it will work. I think it's too early. So yeah, the priority right now is getting more devs and getting people, like, even if they're not devs, but people who want to contribute, who are in that open source movement and philosophy, and not just who want to pay X dollars per month and then have everything taken care of for them, because that's not the kind of people we need right now. In the future, sure, but still too early. Okay, what else? Oh, right, okay, because I restarted the Hangout, so I lost the first, or maybe not. Oh, okay, yeah, so I've got a couple more comments here. So someone was asking about Telescope as a CMS in the chat room recently. And this kind of led to a discussion about like the direction for Telescope, how I see Telescope. So I do not see Telescope as a CMS. I think there's like tons of good ones out there already. I don't really see the need to add one more to the pile. But at the same time, I also do not really see Telescope as just a Hacker News clone. So it's how the project started, and it's kind of the main use case. But my inspiration is really something like WordPress, where, okay, WordPress is a blog in theory, but in practice, people are doing like tons of stuff with it. There's like e-commerce, designer portfolios, static sites, blogs, you know, basically almost anything, even like Hacker News clones can be built with WordPress. I think that's really cool. And I kind of see the same thing for Telescope. Like down the road, I would really like Telescope to be just a platform for people who want to build their community, whether it's a site like Hacker News or Reddit, or even something like YouTube based around videos, or more like a news aggregator where maybe you even don't even have comments, just votes. You know, as long as you're like listing a type of content and letting people interact with it, I would like people to consider Telescope for that. Obviously, it's kind of a very ambitious vision, and it will take some time to get there, but I'm not aware of anything else that really fills that role right now. The closest thing would probably be WordPress, because that's what people use for that. And but I think WordPress, like, is great, but there's a ton of things that can be better and can be improved. And also just the fact that Telescope is built with Meteor, it's been so far, it's been both like a good point and kind of a hindrance sometimes, because people don't know the framework. It's harder to contribute. It's harder to understand. But I believe as Meteor gets bigger and more people understand how it works, that will be a huge advantage, because it kind of does have a lower barrier to entry than something like WordPress. I really believe that. Of course, right now people are more familiar with WordPress because it's been around for years. But down the road, I think with Meteor and Telescope, we can really do something that's more approachable and just easier to customize than WordPress. So yeah, someone was saying, if Telescope can be pivoted to a container type framework and the possibilities start opening up, yeah, that a container or a platform, something that's pretty flexible, where you can add custom fields, you can adapt the behavior. Yeah, that's my vision. Um, so one thing that I wanted to ask you guys is ideas for getting more people to contribute. So my feeling right now is that it's probably pretty hard to contribute because people are not sure where to start, because there's like the roadmap, there's issues on GitHub, there's Telescope Meta, there's the Slack chat room. So there's a couple places where you can ask for support, where you can look for things to do, and it's not really centralized. So that's probably one problem. Also, just because people are not familiar with Meteor and not familiar with the code base, so maybe they're not quite sure how to get things done. So, I mean, let me paste the link to the Hangout once more. If anybody wants to come in and like talk just about their own experience going through the code base, or trying to either to customize things or contribute back to the project, I would be really interested in hearing more, like which roadblocks did you run into? What could be done better? Maybe the documentation is not clear enough. Like, for me, it's really hard to know because I'm so involved with the project that I don't really see what's clear or not clear anymore. For me, it makes sense. So I have to take a step back to try and put myself in the shoes of someone who's just discovering the code. And Meteor, like, the package system, for me, it makes sense. But for a lot of people, it's like, wait, why is there like 20 packages? Which files go where? So yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody is actually gonna take me up on an offer and join in the chat room here. But Yeah, I'd really appreciate it if they do. Maybe Sean, do you have anything to contribute?
Well, there's a lot of features I'd like to add, but since I'm not that familiar with Meteor, it takes me time to get there.
Right.
Usually I use Angular, and in Angular I know exactly how to do it. I want to add collections so users can add their favorites into a group, and I also want to add badges. But everything takes much longer than I expect.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's tricky because you have to learn Meteor and you have to learn how Telescope works, like the internal APIs of Telescope, which are not all documented yet. So yeah, it does take a long time. I think the best approach is probably to find a package that already exists and that does something similar. So in your case, it could be like the subscribe to posts package, because when you click the subscribe to post, it adds that post to a list of subscriptions. So you could kind of do the same thing with collections, I guess, and then try and adapt it. But you do need to now know how Meteor works. So yeah, it's never going to be like that easy if you want to add a pretty major feature like that. Which, by the way, it would be a great thing to have. A lot of people have asked for that as well. Hey,
So
Jeremy. Yeah, oh, sorry, go
if
ahead.
I create telescope collections or telescope badges, I could add that to the project.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it would be in core, like, and by that I mean the core repo, but it could be a plugin, and then there's like a plugin page on the Telescope homepage where it could be listed. Yeah, so right now there's only Jeremy's plugin, but I would love to have more. Oh, and hi, Yusuf. So, Jeremy, do you have any thoughts on the matter, like how to make Telescope more approachable?
Yeah, sorry, I just realized these links were actually for the Hangout itself. I didn't realize they were. I didn't realize you could do the two-way conversation until someone else spoke. Sorry, still getting this going. Yeah, I think it might be helpful if we had a handful of more plugins. It might be a good starting point for people who are kind of new to how to do a plugin that exists outside of the core of Telescope. It might be really helpful to have something to as a starting point to get an idea of, because it's surprisingly simple to add external features to it with not a whole lot of code. But getting started and getting to that point is really kind of intimidating and complicated at first. When you first, especially if you're new to Meteor, and certainly if you're new to Telescope. But I think if we had more of a plugin ecosystem, that might be really helpful for people who are wanting to expand on it. And I agree. I think a lot of things would be good. Not being in core, like in Bedley is a perfect example. That most, not everybody needs, and I'd probably argue that most people don't even use. It's certainly useful to have, but yeah, that'd be a great example of a plugin. So yeah, maybe that'd be a great place to start. Is some kind of example plugins that take a lot of the examples of what the documentation outlines. Ways to add stuff externally.
The problem, the problem with plugins right now is that if people use the one-click deploy to Heroku, they don't really have a way to add them. Because then the only way they can add them is like fork, like clone the repo locally and then run Meteor add and then re-push to Heroku. And if they're using one-click deploy, it probably means that they might not be familiar with Git and so on. So there's not a great solution for that right now, which is why so many things that could be plugins are part of the core by default, because otherwise people would just never use them. Um, so this is the kind of thing where it might be required to have like a custom hosting platform. Because basically you would need to be able to run Meteor Add from the web UI, which might be possible, but then also run, a git command to make that change permanent.
Yeah, you essentially need something that has the equivalent of your development environment and does the deploy for you. So basically everything that we instruct people to do to add packages themselves kind of would need to be done on a server side, which is, I don't think it's out of the question, but it would take a little bit of work to get there. It's unfortunate. It's not like WordPress where, with PHP, as much as I love that language, it is really great at you just drop a file in a folder and it works, and there's no build process. It doesn't build it into this whole thing that's completely different from the development environment. It's a folder structure that is identical in development and production, and it kind of complicates this process. But I think that kind of scenario where the build process happens on a server side is not out of the question. It'd be a big project to do, but I think that's possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about like needing to rebundle the app or do that all over again. Yeah, I think the only way that would work is like if you had a staging server where you can preview your changes and then push them live. Otherwise, you'd have to wait like 1 minute every time you had a new theme or something. It wouldn't be a nice UX. So anyway, not for right now, but hopefully one day. Documentation, yeah, more packages should be documented. That's true. I mean, I think the new documentation is already a lot better than the previous one. And I really like readme.io. Like, at first I wasn't really convinced because it worked very well with a middleman. But the thing is, like, there was a lot of friction for adding new things. So you had to edit the Markdown file, then git add, git commit, git push. Then Heroku does the build process. So it takes like 5 minutes to add a single line of text. And now with readme.io, you just go in there and change something and it's done. So I've been adding things to the documentation a lot more since. But yeah, I can add collaborators, so if somebody wants to help me out with that, let me know. So speaking of features, so you mentioned collections. Somebody else was mentioning Stripe of some other payment integration for users to tip each other or help with server costs. Yeah, I think if you're looking to your users to help you with your server costs, maybe you have really nice users, but I don't know how realistic that is. That being said, Stripe integration could be interesting for things like membership sites. So if you want to enforce like a paywall for people to access your content, that could be really cool. There's actually some services like Memberful or Memberly or something that already do that have APIs, so it would be cool to hook that up with Telescope. Again, probably not something that would be in core, but definitely a cool feature. Okay, so I'll paste the link to the Hangout in the chat room one more time. So if anybody has something to contribute, a question they want to ask live, now's your chance. Otherwise, I think we had a good discussion about features and then the roadmap. So the roadmap is on Trello. Let me share my screen real quick. It's a bit messy, but basically there's a huge backlog of all the ideas we've had to improve Telescope on the left, and then next is what we're considering to work on next, and in progress is what people are actually working on. So actually, maybe Jeremy, you can talk about the command line utility you've been working on.
Sure. Yeah. It's right now all it will do is set up. It will set up. Let's see. It's basically the what's the docs here? I think it's the option 2 on the yeah, the manual setup there, where you basically do the Meteor create and you add the packages file, populate the packages file with all of the list of the telescope packages. Yeah, so that's what it does now. So it's telescope create, whatever name you choose, and it does a Meteor create and deletes the default files that Meteor generates and populates the packages file with what you see on the in the documentation. And then all you have to do is type Meteor, and the app starts up and Telescope's fully installed. So that was step 1. It checks if you have Meteor installed, and usually I would assume most people, by the time they get to that point, they've already crossed that line. But for those that haven't, it'll check if you have Meteor installed, and if you don't, it'll ask you if you want it installed. If you say yes, it'll do it for you. And then beyond that, I think we were considering a way to install telescope-specific packages with it, manage telescope-specific packages. I don't know. I'm certainly open to whatever else is people would find useful. I mean, I do all of that stuff manually as it is myself. I'm building this more or less for other people that are new to Meteor and to Telescope, so it's really kind of for everyone else's benefit, because I certainly can do all these things with a couple of commands myself, but it's for people that are new to it, it's really great to be able to do it with a single command instead of 3 or 4 and having to understand what they're actually doing, and kind of abstracting away some of those steps is helpful for a lot of people. That said, I'm certainly open to whatever anybody thinks is useful. What's the everyday use case for setting up and customizing Telescope? I'd be happy to consider building something that's a command that just kind of does that for you. If it's common enough, it certainly would be worth the effort, because a lot of people get hung up on a lot of the same things. So if we can take some of that friction out of the process, I'd be happy to build something that'll do it. But so right now, all it does is set up a project and get you going with a fully running default install. But yeah, I'm open to whatever else anybody thinks would be useful to them.
Yeah, I think that's already really cool, because for us, like git clone, and you clone with git, that's obvious, but for someone who doesn't even know what git is or clone means, it's like the first thing you tell them to do, they already don't understand it. So it's kind of a bad start and a bad experience. So if instead of that, it's like, okay, run this weird like npm install command, so maybe they won't understand that, but after that it's like telescope create and then your project name. That's already a lot more understandable, I think, and a lot less scary. So yeah, I think it's a pretty useful thing to have. Also, I feel it just makes the project look more serious. Like, oh, it has its own command. Wow.
Yeah.
Business.
Yeah. I was thinking too. Something that was kind of an inspiration for that for me was it used to be. I forget. It's escaping me now what it used to be called, but the creator of Iron Router, his Iron CLI thing that he has now, which I think that's what it's currently called, that'll scaffold out a Meteor project, and it'll there's all kinds of other. It's very similar to the Rails command line stuff. So you can generate a in Rails world, it's model and controller and all of that stuff. But so it's essentially the same, it's the equivalent in the Meteor space, and actually he has controller and collection, and so you can generate all of those individual things, and it's got templates for the standard way to, a starting point for, starting a new collection or starting, inserting a new route, if you wanted to make a new page and you need to, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is really repetitive in Meteor development. So adding a new route and a new page and a new controller for that page, within a given app, that's usually done pretty much the same way every time. So since that's reasonably standardized inside a telescope, I was kind of thinking that maybe something like that might be useful to people. So they want to create a custom page. They could be telescope page ad or whatever. You can add an about page, and it kind of scaffolds out the route and the controller stuff that you need to know or that you need to have, and so maybe stuff like that. So the Iron CLI is a good place to look for ideas there. If anybody thinks that kind of stuff would be useful, I'd be happy to kind of add that to it as well. Again, it's it's faster for me to write that code myself than it is to actually build a command line tool that does it. So I'm more doing it. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of people that are new to that stuff. So it's really valuable to get that kind of input from everybody else, what they would find useful. But that's a good place to look for ideas too.
Okay. One more question. Are we still considering switching to Flow Router? So that's kind of more of a technical media thing. So I'm open to it, basically, since it wouldn't really like functionally it wouldn't make a big difference, I think. So it's not a huge priority, and also it would be a lot of work, I think. So it's not high on the to-do list. But if someone wants to work on it, I'm open to the idea of switching, because I've heard a lot of good things about Flow Router, and I'm always looking for ways to simplify the code and make it more approachable. So why not? If it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that'd be it would be an improvement, but I started looking into it specifically to answer that question, and it would definitely be a little bit of work in our case here. There's a lot of Iron Router is very entangled in a lot of parts of Telescope, and it would not be a small project to do that. But as I mentioned to you, Sasha, I started using it for a client project recently, and it's been great. It's very simple. It's predictable. The whole for anybody who knows Iron Router a little bit better, you know that a lot of things will run multiple times on routes. On before actions are a good example, and sometimes that's a complicated hassle. Perfect example is analytics. You don't want analytics calls firing 3 times every time you go to a new page. And Flow Router kind of takes care of that stuff. It takes a lot of the you can have reactivity in your router, but by default it doesn't, and that really takes away a lot of complication around certain things. So there's definitely some value in considering doing that, but I definitely would not trivialize the amount of work it would take to do it at this point. There's a lot of between subscriptions and all of that stuff. There's a lot of Iron Router tightly wound into Telescope.
Yep. Okay, cool. So yeah, I think we'll call it a day for now. Oh, can't see much of your face.
There you go.
Nice.
There's like a lot of static on your end, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I don't know why the mute thing wasn't working, so I had to kick you out. I'm really sorry about that. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for stopping by. I think we'll do these things maybe every 2 weeks. That would be a good rhythm. I might do the next one at a different time to accommodate people like in Europe or other weird parts of the world. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun for me. Like, I enjoy just seeing people's faces, and not just like, username and avatars. So that's always nice. And again, like, don't be shy about joining the actual Hangout and like coming chat with us. And yes, talk to you later in the Slack chat room then. See you guys.
Bye-bye.